Have Republicans become so aligned with Russia's interests that they can no longer speak openly about one of the most obvious facts in modern geopolitics? That's the explosive question at the center of a moment that has people across the political spectrum talking. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In this video, we're breaking down a fiery exchange involving Jasmine Crockett and what she argues is one of the most troubling developments in American politics today. Crockett isn't holding back. She's making the case that parts of the Republican Party have become so politically attached to Donald Trump's worldview that they now struggle to challenge narratives that benefit Vladimir Putin and Russia. Now, that's a serious accusation, and it's one that immediately raises eyebrows. But what makes this story so fascinating isn't just what Crockett says, it's the reaction she gets when she puts her colleagues on the spot and asks them to address a very simple question. What follows is a moment that many viewers believe speaks louder than any prepared speech ever could. As we go through the clips, we'll unpack exactly what was said, why it matters, and why this debate is becoming a much bigger conversation about truth, loyalty, and the future direction of one of America's major political parties. And trust me, by the time we get to the end, there are a few moments that are going to leave you wondering whether this is just ordinary partisan politics or something much deeper.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It's so interesting to me that we all swear an oath to the Constitution, and we say that we take that oath seriously, but when it comes into actually doing something that looks like preserving that oath or looks like preserving the Constitution, we get a little wobbly, and I'm not really understanding what's going on. Freedom of press doesn't look like kicking out the Washington Post, or actually the Huffington Post has been kicked out. We know that the Associated Press has been kicked out, and now the Washington Post is not going to allow for op-eds in any way if for some reason they criticize the sitting president of the United States. What this is starting to feel like is a smaller version of Russia. And I am trying to tell you that we are nothing like Russia. We are not supposed to be like Russia. But that is what we've got going on. And I'm sorry, I know that some of my colleagues still struggle with answering the question of who won the election in 2020. And you may have felt a way when you had social media checking people and saying, no, Trump did not win the election in 2020. That is absolutely factual. And unfortunately, because some people got all riled up because they believed the lies, they ended up getting locked up because they decided that they were going to believe the lies. They ended up at the Capitol on January 6th, and they were trying to tear this thing apart because they felt like their country was falling apart in front of their eyes because for whatever reason, there were people in power that were peddling a lie about the election. We also know, and some of y'all may still say that COVID was a hoax. COVID wasn't a hoax. Tell that to the over 1 million people that died under Donald Trump's first watch. It wasn't a hoax. So no, I do believe that it was okay. In fact, I do believe that it was ethically right for social media to check people because you had people that didn't know anything about science and decided that they were going to put out whatever lies or propaganda or conspiracy theories they wanted to, and people died. At some point in time, we have to evaluate what is factual, and I know that facts hurt y'all, and I just wish we could get on the same page, but we do know during the presidential election that the president would not go and participate in anything if fact-checking was going to be a part of it because he didn't want to be fact-checked. We know that the vice president got upset in his vice presidential debate when he was fact-checked. It used to be a time in this country that we as members of Congress or elected officials thought that it was okay to just tell the truth. Instead, we're pushing conspiracy theories, and some of them are killing people. It's the same thing that we have coming out of Doge. It's the reason that people are dying. It's the reason that farmers are losing their farms because we continue to peddle conspiracy theories. It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one? Facts matter. Y'all, this is literally potentially putting us into an international crisis. We may be heading towards the next world war because we have a president that wants to pal around with Putin and wants to do everything to make him feel good, including lying about who invaded who. Mr. Chair, I got a minute left, but I really want to yield to any of my colleagues and ask them if they will say today, very basically, that when it came down to the war in Ukraine, that it was not Ukraine that invaded Russia, it was the other way around. Is there anybody in here that has enough courage to say that Russia invaded Ukraine?
You can have my time.
And this is yet the problem. This is the problem. That is not infringing upon free speech.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I will yield to the right.
Thank you, Ms. Crockett. To be clear, your challenge, I think, was across the aisle, because I think every member on your side of the aisle agrees with the obvious fact that Vladimir Putin ordered the filthy, bloody, imperialistic invasion of Ukraine. And in fact, at the time, Donald Trump as president never denied it. In fact, he praised it. He said it was, quote, an act of genius when Putin ordered the invasion of Ukraine. So I would hope some of our colleagues would consent to at least that historical point, since we think history is so important. There are people who want to relive that in our oversight report.
And this is where the entire conversation took a dramatic turn. Think about what just happened. Jasmine Crockett didn't ask a complicated question. She didn't ask for a lengthy policy explanation. She didn't ask anyone to endorse a political party or defend a controversial piece of legislation. She asked what should have been one of the easiest questions imaginable. Who invaded whom? Russia or Ukraine? That's it. A simple question with a simple answer, yet when she opened the floor and gave her colleagues the opportunity to respond, the room suddenly became very quiet. For all the speeches, all the talking points, and all the outrage that dominates political debates these days, there seemed to be very little willingness to state something that much of the world views as a straightforward fact. And that's what made the moment so striking. Because sometimes what people don't say can be just as revealing as what they do. Now, supporters of the Republican Party will undoubtedly have their own explanations for why that happened. But from a political optics standpoint, the silence was impossible to ignore. Crockett essentially handed her opponents an opportunity to immediately dismiss her argument. One clear response could have changed the entire dynamic of the exchange. Instead, there was hesitation. And that's exactly why moments like this generate so much attention. What's especially interesting is how different the conversation around Ukraine looked just a few years ago. If you go back and listen to many Republican lawmakers before Donald Trump became the dominant force within the party, support for Ukraine was often framed as a matter of national security, international stability, and standing up to Russian aggression. Many prominent Republicans spoke openly about the importance of confronting Vladimir Putin and supporting America's allies. Fast forward to today, and the political landscape looks very different. The rhetoric has shifted. The priorities have shifted. And for many observers, that shift raises an obvious question: what changed? That's the question hanging over this entire debate. Because whether people agree with Jasmine Crockett or not, she is pointing to something that many voters have noticed. Positions that once seemed broadly accepted within Republican foreign policy circles are now being debated, softened, or in some cases avoided altogether. And when politicians become reluctant to say something that was once considered routine, people naturally start asking why. That's why this exchange landed with such force. Crockett wasn't simply arguing about Ukraine. She was making a larger point about political loyalty. Her argument was that too many elected officials are becoming more concerned with staying aligned with one political figure than speaking independently on issues that were once considered obvious. Fair or unfair, that's the criticism she was putting on the table. And judging by the reaction, it's a criticism that clearly struck a nerve. What we're witnessing isn't just another partisan disagreement. It's a broader debate about leadership, influence, and who ultimately shapes the direction of a political party. Are lawmakers following their own convictions? Are they responding to their constituents? Or are they taking cues from a single dominant voice within the movement? Those questions aren't going away anytime soon. And that's why exchanges like this continue to resonate far beyond the hearing room where they happened. For many Americans, moments like this have become symbolic of a much larger struggle over facts, accountability, and the future of political discourse itself. The frustration on one side and the silence on the other created a scene that people will likely be talking about long after the hearing ended. But now I want to hear from you. What do you think was really happening in that room? Was the silence being overanalyzed, or do you believe it revealed something deeper about the current state of Republican politics? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more political analysis and commentary. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.